And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy.
I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
Get together, have a few laughs.
Welcome to the Iowa Talk Guys podcast. I'm your host, Teepee.
And I'm Mel.
And Erock can't be here tonight because he's too busy doing rock star things. He's too cool for the podcast this evening. But we'll forgive him because we love him.
Because he's a rock star.
And he's a rock star. Not a good one, but he's still a rock star. So tonight we are doing another show with a brother from down under, Drew Missen. For those of you who don't know, Drew Missen is a podcaster who hosts multiple shows, but his main show is You're Missing the Point podcast, which is available on all podcatchers. He is an educator, an artist, a student of history, a retro vehicle restorator, a Christian, a modern-day internet bushranger, and an all-around Australian badass. Please welcome Drew Missen to the show.
Hey, look at that. That's a fantastic intro, man. And as I said, I'll be sending you that $50 on Venmo later on for those wonderful
No, you just gave us such a flattering intro a few shows back. I figured I got to try to at least attempt to return the favor.
You did well. You actually looked into some Australian history of the bushrangers and everything. I'm quite impressed. Look at you go.
Yeah, buddy. I actually learned about the bushrangers from your show, so there you go.
There we go. Teaching people in multiple ways.
That's
fantastic.
Right. Yeah. So, anyways, the topic of the evening that we're recording the show, and this show is going to come out, I'm going to get this out before the U.S. elections. So this is kind of just speculation on how we may, or I guess, how should I word this? What we think may happen after the U.S. election, whether whoever is elected, I don't know if it necessarily matters because we've said it before in our show that we are going to, we believe that we're on our way to World War III. And we'd like to ask Drew how Australia would, how they would be supporting NATO in a World War III scenario. All hell broke loose. I think I have a good idea, but I'm sure Drew has a much better idea.
Yeah, well, a lot's happened in the last month or so. Australia gave away 40 of our Abrams tanks to Ukraine, so they're just going to be blown up by drones. And our replacements aren't set to arrive until like 2035, so we're 40 tanks down. Not that 40 tanks makes a huge difference in, say, kinetic warfare on our own land, because Australia's the size of Europe and North America, so got a big land mass that 40 tanks don't really go far. And I wonder how long armored vehicle and manned aircraft are going to be competitive in the modern day theatre of war. Ukraine's really thrown a spanner in the wrench of that. How we've seen essentially little backyard made drones with a few little 3D printed doodads can absolutely destroy the battlefield. So I don't know whether we're actually going to replace those tanks or whether we're just going to mass produce a whole bunch of little Chinese knockoff drones and just arm the crap out of them. It's my views kind of changed a bit since a lot of our gear's been sent overseas, so it's interesting times, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely wild how the battle space has changed and so quickly. And seeing a lot of videos coming out of there. I mean, because now they're starting to mount weapons on there, and they're having those magnesium grenades that were just lighting fires, right? So they'll just come over top of your trench and just set it on fire over top of you. And the troops on the ground, they have these, I guess, receivers that pick up the, I don't know if it's the drone, some frequency from the drone, whatever they're using, but it's like a beeper. And as the drone gets closer, it beeps faster and louder, right? So it's like videos of guys just laying in trenches as these drones are flying over top of them, where it's like beep, 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 beep. Then you hear it blow up somewhere else, and then the beeping stops. It's just like, dude, that'd be so terrifying. So stressful.
What a level of trauma. Like, a lot of these guys that managed to survive that hellish war zone, they're going to go home and they're going to have PTSD from the microwave going off.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Yeah, no doubt, dude. And not to laugh, unfortunately, shouldn't laugh at that, but it's true. And then I know for a fact that there's been unknown Abrams being fortified, having like armor, like 4 or 5 foot of armor put on the front of them and being sent overseas for tank on tank engagements. But what we've been seeing from this drone warfare is that they just run around, they fly it into the back of it, hit their soft spot, disable the turret, start with that. It only takes a couple drones. And in China, they just had this massive drone show where it was like I want to say like 12,000 drones doing this show in the sky, all working simultaneously.
It was a world record. Like, it was the most drones in a show simultaneously at one time.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, I would recommend going looking it up. It's pretty wild. It's like, now imagine if a military, so if they can do this for entertainment, a military could do that, right?
Exactly.
With
Have you ever
weaponized.
seen the science fiction movie? It's adapted from a book series called Ender's Game.
Yes,
It's set entirely in the future.
Yeah, it's a
good movie. Set entirely in the future, and it's pretty much all drone warfare. And ironically, it's kids that are the soldiers of the future because they're so integrated into playing video games and having screen time. But it's essentially just swarms of drones that overwhelm larger ships or overwhelm bases and whatever they're fighting against. We're on the precipice of that now. We're seeing what are essentially just civilian-based camera drones that are being built in backyards, made of cardboard, 3D printed pieces added to it.
Oh yeah.
And eventually they're going to be in that swarm zone.
Cardboard drones for the war effort.
It's so true. That's the scary thing. Like, it's low tech. It really is. We think drones are highly sophisticated, but it's just an RC car with wings, right?
Right, yeah.
It's a low tech innovation for the battlefield.
Right. I think most people, they have it, especially, well, I can't say for all Australians, but here in America, when you say a drone being used for warfare, we automatically think of a predator drone. Like, this thing's the size of a plane, right?
You're not thinking of the little ones that have cameras on them that you can just strap some C4 to and run it into somebody.
Well, you mean those nerds in the park that do that for recreation?
Yeah, exactly. Those little ones.
Yeah.
And the way these things maneuver now, like, there's it's its own type of racing platform where they fly these things through abandoned warehouses and they have to go full speed, go navigate windows, doorways.
They have ones that do like 200 kilometers mile an hour, or 200 kilometers an hour.
Like, how do you stop that? You'll hear the whizzing at a distance, and then you're gone. There's so little you can do to stop these things. Like, we're supposedly told that there's frequency-based nets which you can put up that will drop a drone out of the sky. Like, we were told that what happened with the Trump assassination attempt was that the kid flew a drone over previously, which he shouldn't have been able to because that net was supposed to be in place. Well, if these nets really exist, why aren't the Russians and the Ukrainians using them again to defend themselves? Are they just bypassing this invisible net, or do they not exist in the first place?
Duh, dude, because they're using Soviet-era weapons still. That's why they didn't have this stuff back in the Soviet era.
Poor Russians. But and I don't think we've got any further into truly understanding what's going on there. There's clearly a level of propaganda and rhetoric coming from both sides over there, but more and more, it's increasingly looking like just a potentially staged conflict in which we're Orthodox Christians and young fighting age men on both sides being put into the meat grind. And people have always kind of said this throughout history, that it's the rich men that send poor sons to go off and die for their wars, but it's becoming more and more relevant today. I think early on in the conflict, people picked a side of Ukraine or Russia for political reasons, geopolitical, economic, borders, all the standalone type of decisions you'd pick a side, right? I think now a lot of people are moving away from that, looking at it going, it really does seem utterly pointless. And if there was any kind of reasoning behind it, surely someone would have come out on top by now. It just seems to be stagnating for a very long time.
Well, yeah, in the very beginning, they were like, oh, these farmers in Ukraine are kicking the shit out of Russia. You know, like, they're going to be done. This is going to be over in a couple months. That's what we were being told over here anyways. And I was trying to tell people, I'm like, oh, the same Russia that mopped up ISIS in Syria in less than a year when the U.S. had been screwing around in there for 2 years, 3 years. That same Russia. Okay. And now we're seeing where, yeah, like you said, it's just a meat grinder. I mean, really on both sides and stuff. And now North Korea is getting involved. There was initial reports that South Korea was reporting on that, their intelligence communities, but I just saw also that the U.S. and European intelligence agencies are confirming that as well.
Yeah, we're starting to see, and this reminds me of what the USSR did towards the tail end of World War II, where it was almost like a shock and awe campaign. They knew that the Third Reich was, increasingly, say, an ethno-state, and they didn't really like any other type of racial persuasion. So what the Russians did, they formed the ranks of their vanguard out of the Mongolian and kind of Siberian ethnic groups, and rushed Berlin with those people as almost like a shock and awe campaign that this lesser than human people to the Nazis' eyes were defeating them, and it was a psychological warfare. And are we kind of seeing that now? Is this the Russians just taking advantage of the unwashed masses of North Korea, the poverty-stricken farmers there? They're getting fed a few good meals, put in Russian gear and Russian equipment, and thrown at the front lines like cannon fodder. It's a hard one to navigate, because a lot of people would try to argue that this is evidence that Russia's doing really badly. Russia must not have the men because they're starting to throw North Koreans at them. It's an interesting tactic.
The whole Russia is running out of people narrative, dude. Like, hard for me to fathom that anybody would believe that would be true. You know what I mean? Like, when you look at the size of the military and stuff, like on one of our shows, we read the statistics. They have, and they're just reserve units, they have more military members than the U.S. and the U.K. combined, just in the reserves. So the fact that people are saying that, yeah, Ukraine's grinding them down into dust and that they're running out of people and they're running out of ammo, we've been hearing this time and time again. They keep throwing the same headlines at us. You know what I mean? And yeah,
it's just rinse and repeat, isn't it?
Yeah, and then when you see videos and photos coming out of those cities now, dude, they're just literally what used to be cities are just footprints of buildings and houses now. Just gone.
So the only logical thing when I analyze what's going on over there with, say, the North Koreans, and earlier on we heard reports that there's potentially units of Chinese going in and getting blooded, as they say, getting them ready for some kind of a true kinetic warfare with the West. Are they just getting the North Koreans ready and getting them riled up and get them to the point where they've got the experience in ground-to-ground combat so that they've got a sizable vanguard to throw at the front lines? Because really, North Korea doesn't have the technological forefront to be able to engage any one nation by themselves, but they become that support unit. Ironically, a lot like Australia. Australia would end up being just that supportive base for other operations, and I think the North Koreans in this case would just make up a sizable vanguard of an invasion force more than anything else.
Yeah, definitely, dude. It's almost like in the remake of Red Dawn, when it was the North Koreans and the Russians working together, right? And even Thor himself sitting there, he's like, the North Koreans couldn't have gotten here by themselves. They had to have had help. And then later on you find out it was the Russians that helped them get over there. But North Korea has also been China's kind of like playground for military weapons and stuff for a long time too, right?
That's true, yeah. And to an extent, North Korea has almost been the proxy state of China this whole time. It's cheap, essentially slave labor that China uses from there. Mm-hmm. And Russia's done it from time to time as well. There's a great documentary not that long ago. It would have been 2010. A British journalist from the BBC traveled into the kind of shared regional areas of North Korea, Russia, and China, and found that there was the ex-USSR, so you've got ex-Soviet state officials who were still operating slave camps for timber and lumber there, and they were just using North Korean dissidents as their slave labor. And they were getting exported into China and all over the place within that region because they just had this surplus of people. So whether the state of North Korea wasn't able to feed that many people and they just started kicking doors and selling people off like modern day slaves, who knows? But it really shows the way that North Korea has been exploited by the larger powers within the region.
Yeah, and the ones in power, they're kept comfortable. You know, like all their generals and stuff, they all have those sex squads. You ever heard of that?
Yep. But they have this ability to live in this greater than real life experience where they make up things like he had a perfect game of golf and he invented the hamburger and all these outlandish things which they sell to their populace who are just scrounging on getting firewood and a decent meal in their belly on the average day today.
Yeah, like how Kim Jong-un doesn't have a butthole. He doesn't like poop or pee.
That's only for filthy peasants.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've almost added this level of grandiose, godlike affinity to the Un family, where this is the great deer leader, and then there's the son, and then there's the latest reincarnation of that, where it's the fattest one, and clearly he's not having any trouble finding food.
Yeah, he's like the only motherfucker in Asia that has gout still. You know what I mean? Like, the last one was Genghis Khan's fat ass.
Well, it looks like he's the only guy that's eating sweet and sour pork on a daily basis because he's just so rotund, isn't he? He looks like a modern-day Buddha.
Yeah, you'd think somebody in power that wanted his people to worship him as a god would have, like, a god complex where he's like, Homelander from, The Boys. You'd think he'd want to be jacked. Worship me. I am the superior species.
Isn't it wild, though, how the West broadly would consider to be, authoritarian quasi-dictator states like North Korea, China, and Russia, all their leaders haven't really aged that much. They don't really have a lot of stress going on in their lives. When you look at the likes of a Obama, a Biden, a Hillary, all these, leaders within the West, as soon as they get into terms, even if it's just low-level government, say a senator or something like that, they age really, really quickly. Yet we don't see that in any of these quasi-dictator fascist states, supposedly.
I mean, that could be the stress, but that could also be like the other stuff that they're doing behind the scenes that we all say they are doing.
Bathing in baby's blood.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be a lot easier to get away with it in North Korea than here. They just drink the adrenochrome here. Over there, maybe Kim and his whole family's bathing in it, letting all their pores soak it up. It's so gross. Sorry.
Well, maybe it's a case of that the Western diet's pretty terrible these days with seed oils and all the additives and things that are in our food. It's not real food anymore.
Oh, no,
maybe that's a byproduct.
Our food is
they're tainting their own food. Yeah, they're tainting their own food system. They're feeding us crap, and via association, when they try to get that adrenochrome, they're just poisoning themselves.
Yeah, that could be it too. He's actually eating real food still.
Probably.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting? That's such a crazy thing. The conspiracy theorists got it right again. Now that's like mainstream that people are talking about. You know about seed oils in our food and how it's unhealthy? And I'm like, yeah. I've been talking about this for years.
Vegetable oils and stuff.
Yeah. And now that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is blowing the whistle on it, so to speak, I guess, people are starting to wake up, and that's awesome. But we'll see how far it goes, because remember when Bernie Sanders woke a bunch of people up to, the 1% of people in power, the most wealthiest in the world, or America and stuff. And then all those people just were like,
eat the rich.
Eat the rich. That's why I'm going to vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Because he's a normal guy. He's down to earth like us. Just like, apparently, did you catch the Trump or J.D. Vance, Joe Rogan episodes?
I haven't caught the Vance one. I caught the Trump one. I was actually a little bit disappointed. I thought it'd be a bit more entertaining than it was. I thought that maybe Joe would have asked a few more hard-hitting questions, particularly along the lines of, say, Operation Warp Speed or bump stock bans, things like that. But he really just had a sit-down conversation interview. It wasn't really pushing the envelope as far as I thought it would. So I was a bit taken back by that. Yeah. I was a bit surprised by the rhetoric change from Trump towards Russia, saying that he took a very different stance than what he has, say, over the past 4 years, that's for sure.
So I didn't watch the whole or listen to it. Could you? I've seen clips, but I did not see a clip on that one. Can you elaborate on that for us, please?
Well, we know how Trump's always been. He's in the past. He's traditionally always said, I love Putin. I'm great. I get along with Putin. We make deals. We understand each other. And this is kind of given way to the Democrats and the left in America, kind of going along with that Russian collusion kind of a hit piece. Well, Trump in this circumstance said he'd put an end to the war in Ukraine really quickly and he'd make Putin stop. And the way in which he was talking, it was more adversarial than it was, say, someone who's a peer, someone who's at the same level as him. He was very much putting it out as he was hitting a market that Russia's the enemy in a certain sense, and that if they don't play ball, he's going to put an end to it type of a talking point, which I found very interesting. Because I think it's placating into a lot of the ideas if you're going to have this new idea of American nationalism under Trump and America's team number one and it's America first all the way, even on an international stage, you can't have another big kid on the block like Russia pushing international policy through Ukraine. So it's almost like he's setting up the terms for the war in Ukraine to end, but at the same time, if the war in Ukraine simply just ends because Trump says no more and then Putin's like, okay, how are people going to handle that? It's been a war that's been going on for like nearly 3 years and no one was willing to stop, but as soon as Trump says stop, he stops. That would tell me that it's more an orchestrated war for the meat grinder than anything else, and it wasn't a genuine play by Putin to defend his borders or Ukraine either. It was just all staged in the sense of, having that massive distraction and a place to funnel your money into. It just seems so odd that a Trump could step onto the stage if he wins the election and say no more war, and then Putin would be okay with that.
Right.
I heard an opinion of if Trump wins that he'll help Putin get what he wants, so the war ends over there, and then he'll help Ukraine save face, and then we're still going to back Israel in what they're doing. And then when we go to fight Iran, Putin's just going to be like, well, I already got what I want, so fuck that place, and you guys just go have fun over there. So there wouldn't be like a World War III in the sense of what we're kind of thinking of everybody just joining in and kind of be Russia is already happy. Maybe we could, make China happy by working with them and then just not have a full-out World War III.
Which I think that's probably more horrifying than an all-out World War III, because in a World War III situation, it has enemy combatants and it has different, say, nation states around the world that are working independently. In this situation where Russia gets what they want, they kind of say, screw you, Iran, and America and Israel just deal with Iran in a way that they want to. That tells me that it's two friends playing on a chessboard and they don't care who wins the game. They're just playing turn for turn to see what happens. And in that situation, it really does become obvious that the people who run the world are putting the sham out there that there's opposition in the world, when really they're all on each other's side and they're all just, playing the game as they want to. And I think that's more concerning because we're fed fear in this campaign of we could be at war anytime now. It's looking like it could escalate and China's looking at Taiwan. Well, in that situation where, say, they get the Donbass region and they get those annexed eastern parts of Ukraine, and Ukraine saves face by getting, massive payouts, and then Iran gets dealt with. Well, we're only like 3 to 4 years away from chip manufacturing in the United States to be at a level that Taiwan has. So does America just cut ties with Taiwan and go, oops, sorry, we've got our own manufacturing now, so, one China policy, let's go.
Yeah, sucks to be you, nerd.
Stop hitting yourself.
Yeah, you brought this upon yourself, yeah.
I mean, we have that mine in North Carolina that just got all their permits re-upped so they can make it bigger for like the lithium batteries and stuff, and we're mining all that quartz for supercomputers and whatnot too. So once we get all that stuff going, like, we're not going to need these Asian countries that have all this stuff already. So what's our incentive?
Well, and you said prior to this recording to put my tinfoil hat on this conversation that if this is the case where we've been fed the fear campaign of a third world war and all these international conflicts around the world, and ultimately it ends up being they get what they want in the end and no real kind of kinetic war takes place. It's just shuffling pieces around on a board. If it gets to the point where all these external little vassal states like a Taiwan and Iran and the like aren't really needed and they just get sold out at the 11th hour, what's to stop them from just selling out the average citizen? Because we currently live in a technological age where the majority of people simply aren't needed. And this is a very much a New World Order type of elitist statement, the useless eaters. Well, to a certain extent, they're correct, because we have a level of technology now where we can produce more food than we need. And there's a whole heap of jobs and people that exist in this world that don't actively add or contribute really to anything. So if you're thinking about this as some kind of a god complex elitist family, we've got the technology now where they can go, you know what, we don't need as many serfs now because we can replace the serfs with technological industry that's self-replicating. It takes care of itself. We might only need one peasant to maintain the robots in a single factory. We don't need 300 people working the machines anymore. Yeah. So we've kind of built ourselves into our own prison complex without even realizing it.
Especially with the advancements in AI now. And unfortunately, yeah, that's a real thing. They were talking about Davos, I believe, this year, about the useless people and how they are basically keeping them preoccupied right now with drugs and video games, computer games.
What about those new Tesla robots? What are those things called again?
iRobot?
No, like the humanoid robots that he has coming out now. I can't remember what they're called.
Optimus, also known as Tesla Bot, is a general-purpose robotic humanoid, currently under development by Tesla Incorporated.
But those things are creepy too. Like he's trying to use them to like do all your housework, and like you're gonna have like
you can have more time to sit down and jerk off porn,
to do nothing.
Yeah,
to get fat and lazy,
and turn into the people from that Wall-E movie, right?
Yeah, I think we probably end with heading towards a future where we're probably going to have the surrogates analogy, where the majority of humanity lives vicariously through an avatar that's hooked into their Neuralink, and they lay in a bed all day getting fat, while their surrogate, their robot that they portray themselves in, is this beautiful, amazing version of what they always wanted to be.
Yeah.
And then there's that fringe little group that doesn't trust technology and they live on the outskirts of society. Aldous Huxley spoke about it as well, as the wild people that live out on the peripheries. But I think we're going to see a more and more delineation between people who are willing to live in the air quotes matrix, and then people who don't want any part of it. But it's becoming increasingly harder to not be part of it. And if you are going to be on the periphery, you literally are going to have to be like a caveman living in the woods, because everything's going to be trackable. You're going to be corralled into 15-minute cities, and if you are living as a wild person, you're going to have to live in a goddamn cave, because that's the only way to escape it.
Pretty much, yeah. I'm okay with that. I don't know if my family is, but you know. Yeah, and it will get to the point. I mean, yeah, we'll have to be in a cave, because if you are even trying to build your own housing or stay in, say, old housing, it'll be like an equilibrium. They'll send Christian Bale after your ass.
Yeah, they'll probably do that for the people that have physical books.
Yeah, art, real art, just like in the movie, you know.
Equilibrium.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already phasing out like physical media for like movies and stuff.
Changing things, yeah.
So everything's going digital. So what's gonna,
And they're putting all this stuff. So I don't play video games very often, as much as I used to when I was a young man and wasted a bunch of time with them. But there's a new game that came out. Well, I shouldn't say it's that new. I think it's a few years old now, called Hell Let Loose. You ever heard of it?
Can't say I have, no.
It's a World War II online shooter. It's a fun game, but in that game, on one of the maps, or a few of the maps, there's like all these chemtrails in the sky. Like legit chemtrails and the types of new clouds that have been shown up. And I'm like, interesting that they would have this in this game to try to portray it, to brainwash this new kids, all these kids that are playing this, that, oh yeah, this is normal. This shit's been happening since the 40s. I saw it in the video game that I've been playing.
Well, they're kind of doing that on a cultural level as well, aren't they? Like, was it the last Battlefield game that came out? You could be a disabled woman as the main character.
Oh yeah, it was like one of the Call of Duty games or something.
Yeah, they're throwing so much DEI nonsense into these games that it builds a perception that a lot of, say, these what would can be considered minorities were more prevalent in that time than what they actually were. We see it in the BBC in the United Kingdom, where they had a story about the Romans that built Hadrian's Wall and the Romans that were supposed to be Spanish people that were stationed there, part of the legions, and they depicted nearly every single one of them as an African, and they tried to back it up by saying, you know, Spain is very close to North Africa. Still doesn't mean that the Spanish Roman legions were made up of African people, and they're trying to say that there already were African people in Britain from the Roman era, well before the Caribbean and Barbados and alike brought their migrants into the United Kingdom. So it's a restructuring of history. It's a restructuring of culture and what is perceived to be true and not. And if a lot of these, say, physical books aren't available anymore and they're changing things in real time digitally on streaming services, it's only going to take a generation or two and history will be completely rewritten in real time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, dude, for sure. And we already saw, wasn't Google's AI? They had to change it because it kept generating pictures of like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. They're like black.
Like Colonel Sanders.
Yeah. And like it would not print, or it would not generate a picture of like a white politician or from history,
or like
at all.
all white family or anything like that.
Yeah. And people
Even
are like,
if
hey,
you'd
Google.
prompt it to do it.
Maybe going a little hard here in the paint department. And you know,
it really canged out, didn't it?
Yeah. Just wild. And yeah, and that's really when you start looking into like the mud flood stuff and like Tartaria or whatever I guess you want to call it, and the orphan train things and all that stuff, like something happened, and yeah, they were able to create within a few generations. The history is completely lost, and it is whatever they tell us it is.
Well, you could argue, you could speculate that World War I was just a means of, say, clearing out all the evidence. How much of mainland Europe was just carpet bombed and destroyed via artillery? There wasn't much left over. So even if you did have, say, the physical books or the artifacts, they were very quickly destroyed.
I think World War I still holds the record for the most artillery shells used in like a certain span of time. There was just areas completely decimated.
Yeah.
There's still parts of Europe, I believe, that you like can't go to because there's landmines and shit.
Yeah, there's also parts of Europe you can go to that are still just giant craters everywhere from the shells hitting it. In World War II, there was like a mop-up job of whatever they missed basically in World War I. Yeah. Especially like with the firebombing of Dresden, dude. Like when you really look into that, it's just horrific. Absolutely no need to firebomb that city whatsoever. It wasn't a military target, but it was an absolutely gorgeous city.
Well, and it's just like when we went into Iraq, and then like one of the first things to come up missing was all this stuff from all these museums about ancient Babylon and Mesopotamia and all this stuff.
Gilgamesh and Nimrod.
Yeah, and it's like weird how all this stuff was the first stuff to come up missing.
Yeah, we were talking to somebody else about that.
Well, all that just happened to coincide with, you know, Saddam was rebuilding a lot of the ziggurats that were over there and repairing them. And
right.
He was talking about himself being the new Gilgamesh. So...
yeah, and the Illuminati bloodlines were like, oh yeah, hold my beer. And then went and just took his ass out.
The full weight of the U.S. military.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Brandon Kroll's onto something with not necessarily. Maybe it's not necessarily Donald Trump being the Antichrist. What if it's Barron Trump? What if he is a CRISPR baby with Nimrod's DNA?
This is literally, I was going to sit down with Brandon yesterday to record an episode exactly about that, and I completely
no way.
Reschedule. I've got that idea as well. I'm not necessarily thinking that Trump's an antichrist, because just my rudimentary understanding of scripture is that there's a shadow that foretells the coming of the antichrist. A shadow was cast over the world before the antichrist appears. I would almost see that as what we're starting to see in politics with popularists and popularism. We've got Trump. He's not a politician. He bucks the status quo. People love a popularist because they're not a career politician.
Right.
He's got in. He's out now. He's coming back in for a second term, potentially. We have Millet doing the same thing. We're starting to see pockets of these Trumpian type of political candidates coming up that aren't necessarily right-wing or left-wing. They're just, you know, common sense, air quotes. I think it's almost setting up a dynasty. It's getting ready for not necessarily a random non-politician to take charge and clean up the world and save people, but it's setting up the dynastic families. Like, people think of monarchies having to be of royal blood. Well, a dynasty in itself just means it's a family line that continues and endures. And I think we're seeing that with the Trump family. We've got some of the older Trump's boys who are very big politically now, and they're talking heads, and they're definitely going to be part of cabinet in some capacity. And Barron's just kind of waiting in the wings. He's growing up, he's watching, he sees what's going on. You know, there's a lot of great talking points. They tried to kill my dad twice, and everyone hates him. And give it another 10, 15 years, he could be a very big, viable candidate that's not only considered to be a popularist because of his father's movement, but he could be a raised and groomed career politician, and people wouldn't even realize it.
Oh, no doubt, dude. We'll get this, okay? So to go off in the rhubarb a little bit further, imagine Trump does win, and then he gets assassinated while he's in office. And then Barron, everybody would rally around him. He'd be like, they killed my father. I'm going after the people that killed my father. And everybody, dude, you know, even people that like hate Trump, they'd be like, oh, that is terrible. And that's like Bruce Wayne's origin story right here, right? You know,
right.
But it's Barron Trump. Yeah, he'd have all the money behind him. He'd have all these politicians, all of his dad's buddies and stuff on him. You know what I mean? Like, if he's being groomed, especially now for that spot, then that would totally make sense.
It's almost like the origin story of Damien from The Omen in a lot of ways. I don't know if you've ever seen the last one in that franchise. Sam Neill plays the grown-up version of him, and he's been this businessman who's been very influential with saving world hunger, and he comes across as a philanthropist, but he ends up positioning himself into like a global world government and running for American presidency, even though he's British in the series. But anyway, very much what I can see happening with Barron Trump. Let's just say Trump gets assassinated at some point in his term of his second term of presidency. Vance takes over. Vance takes Barron under his wing. He supports him. He kind of helps the Trump family out. The next election, we see maybe one of Trump's older sons go in as either a VP or a presidential ticket, kind of setting up the motion for Barron later on in life to take the limelight. Because, like you said, if his dad was assassinated and killed and everyone's out to get him, he's going to have the sympathy vote. And if there's successive Republican groups after that are just kind of keeping the seat warm for him until he comes of age, it's very telling.
See, and that would be, we know that J.D. Vance has been going to Bilderberger group meetings. So how fitting would it be that if Trump gets taken out and then now a Bilderberger boy is running the show? I don't know. It sounds rather convenient for the elitists of the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's, you know what, I think the biggest key element that no one really talks about for, say, a global world order, a global government is Vance has an Indian wife, doesn't he?
Yes. That's
kind of like his tack into the Indian vote. Well, India really is a sleeping giant. People used to talk about Japan being America being the sleeping giant of World War II, that the Japanese said, if we wake this, we'll incur the wrath of it. The real sleeping giant of the world is India. India has the largest number of millionaires in the world. They have an economic and global migration policy in which they have influence over nearly every single Western country and the third world. They are, in a way, I'm not saying that they're doing it for nefarious means, but even if it's just exporting labor around the world, India is essentially recolonizing the rest of the world. And in the space of maybe 2 or 3 generations, you're going to have very large, near parity to local populations of Indians in each country, because there's declining birth rates along the West. Indian families keep having more and more kids, and they're exporting more and more people. They're one of the largest populous nations on the world. I think they surpassed China recently. So they've got an excess of people. Well, if you send out all these people and all these families and they start working in Western nations, eventually they're going to get to a capacity and a level where they start voting, they start dictating national policy, they start dictating cultural practices. In Australia, our Indian population at the moment wants to have our government recognise Diwali as a national holiday, and they're still quite small in comparison to the rest of the population. So if you take into account India, in a lot of ways, is reseeding the world as the Western world is declining in birth rates. You're going to have pretty much a single kind of monoculture across the West that would probably be very malleable if they are in bed with, say, a New World Order or global elites. And I'm noticing more and more, particularly in America, we're getting a lot of very pro-Indian groups. You've got Vance with his wife. You've got, forgive me, I can't remember the gentleman's name, who was potentially going to be a running mate of Trump's, but he didn't at the last minute, and he's probably going to look like a cabinet member, an Indian man via ancestry. Can you help me out?
Ramaswamy.
Ramaswamy. So you're getting a lot of you're getting a lot of influential, say, second or third generation Indians now that are working their way into Western politics. And we saw that recently with the most recent conservative British Prime Minister. He was Indian. So we're getting to a point where the West is being recolonized by the subcontinent. And if that general idea is being used as a piece for global government, it's working really well because they're reestablishing what it means to be Westerners across the Anglosphere at very least.
Yeah, and they're all over Canada. There's a bunch of Indian immigrants all over. I was up in Toronto, I think was it earlier this year, and it was they were all over the place. Yeah, and they still hold on to those traditional family values of having multiple kids, teaching them, your family heritage and stuff, your religion and all that stuff. The things that in first world countries are considered old fashioned now, right? What are you, a boomer? Well, suppose you want your wife to stay home and cook and clean, and you just are the only one bringing in money, huh? That's considered old fashioned thinking, but that's not how. And same with in Asian communities too. There's a lot of Asian immigrants coming into the United States as well. Not nearly as much as I think Indians, but.
So the young man I work with, he knows a lot of people that immigrate into this country. His parents immigrated into this country, so he's around a lot of those people. And he was talking to me about how it's funny to him that this depression and I want to cut my dick off community that we have here in America is like strictly almost a white person thing. He's like, you don't see Muslims doing it. You don't see Indians doing it. You don't see Mexicans running around doing it. He's like, it's just a bunch of white people that say that they're oppressed. He's like, it's just it. So all these people are coming into our country right now, aren't doing the things that we're doing, where we're already here and not having kids, and we're not getting married, and we're not continuing the American population. We're having people come in and replace the American population right now.
Yeah.
Well, that whole idea is very ironic, isn't it? Like the pitch for, say, gender dysphoria and depression amongst that demographic of society is it's because they can't be their true, authentic self. That's why they have high suicide rates, they have depression. And the only way we can solve that is by allowing them to be their true self, to be their true gender, right? So the West has kind of been always very kind of open and empathetic, so we allow this to happen. Well, is the real reason we're seeing suicide rates in general amongst younger populations across the West skyrocketing and all these gender-based issues because we've spent the last 20 to 30 years being told we have no culture as, say, European Westerners. We don't have our own defined culture as Australians. You don't have a defined culture as Americans. British people have no true culture. That in itself causes depression. That's not knowing who you are. That's not being your true authentic self. If you're a person that has no identity, that in itself is going to cause mental health issues because you don't know who you are and where you've come from. And when we've been propagandized for the past 20 to 30 years or more that everything white and white associated is bad because of a certain mustache man from Austria who loved painting, it's created this sense of not belonging, and the only way to solve it is to recreate yourself. So it's this self-manifesting destiny where, for whatever reason, the powers that be have targeted us at our base level, our culture and who we are. You destroy who we are as an identity, then you can control the playing field. And I think that's playing out in real time. And the danger is kids today, I think the most recent generation, they're pushing back pretty hard on it. they see what's going on, we're going to see like 1980s level kids who don't give a shit, who are extremely resilient, come back, but with a vengeance. You know how we used to grow up saying, oh, this is gay, and we didn't really mean anything by it. It was just like a throwaway saying. Kids today are saying some pretty horrendous, dark shit, and they mean it. They're not saying it ironically. They're saying it because they're sick of seeing it. And this is the issue. They've pushed the pendulum so far to, say, the left, that it's swinging back really fast to the right, and we're going to see some what I would describe as Weimar Republic situations, which we're seeing now with the gender kind of confusion and boom that's happened across the West. And unfortunately, it's playing itself into a position, whether they're controlling it or not, where there's going to be Weimar solutions to this. And I don't think anyone wants to see that. And that's the horrific thing. We're that generation where we're in between it. We're sitting somewhere between the people that created this plan versus the generation that are going to respond to it. And we're the ones that are going to have to watch it play out.
Yeah, we could only hope. I saw a meme the other day where some people were driving by this one dude that was dressed all jacked up and weird, and they were laughing at him, and it said, "The earth is healing. Bullying is coming back." But
It's a really great meme. And it was along the lines of it had gender identity and it skyrocketed, bullying went down, and suicide rates are going up with the gender identity. And ever since we stopped bullying, that's when all society's issues started to manifest.
Hey, it builds character sometimes. I mean, there are points where it's, you go too far, but we're not advocating bullying on the show, obviously. But sometimes you just need to stop being a pussy and toughen the fuck up.
Yeah, what's wrong with a little bit of resilience? Like, a good motto to live your life by is don't be a dick. And if you're deliberately going after someone to be a dick, then I would classify that as that's beyond bullying. A little bit of banter between people or hanging shit on one another, that's uniquely Australian culture. We give each other shit. That's our way of expressing like gratitude and a camaraderie towards each other.
Oh, no, we do that here
That's been
too.
completely lost. Yeah, well, it's been completely lost within, like I said, the last two generations, where words are literally violence.
Yeah, words hurt me. I can see where you get your feelings hurt, but like you're choosing to be upset by this shit. Like kids these nowadays, they don't understand that because, well, I shouldn't say kids, but like this college generation nowadays, a lot of them, they've never been like told no. Like their parents just basically give them whatever they want and stuff. Like some of these people that go up and try to like outsmart Charlie Kirk and shit on campuses. Have you seen those videos?
Yeah.
It's also wild to see such a bunch of like, you're either Kamala or for Trump on those campuses, like all those freaking mega hats and stuff everywhere. You know what I mean? But most of those people that try to go up there and outsmart them and shit are just, they have a totally askew view of reality. And it's like, how the hell did you get to this point in your life? And part of it, I'd have to blame their parents.
It's a weird perspective. I'm just looking at America objectively from the outside looking in. People throw around the term Trump derangement syndrome quite a bit, and it tends to lean more towards the purple-haired weirdo that's screaming because Trump won. And anyone who's against Trump is becoming this, over-the-top, larger-than-life kind of weird caricature of what the left is, and they're adamantly against Trump to the point where they scream and bark at people who express otherwise. Yeah, but it also goes the other way. There's Trump derangement syndrome on the other end, where you see this a kind of a pointing of Trump to some kind of a savior complex and godhood, where Trump's going to be the guy that come along and save us, and you can't say anything negative about him, or you're a left-wing Democrat. Like, you can't say, hey, remember how Trump brought in bump stock bans? Or do you think maybe we should hold Trump responsible for Operation Warp Speed and we should really push him for an answer on that? God, don't bring that up, because then you're the worst person around. You might as well be one of these Hollywood elites that are trying to get people to vote for Kamala. You're the enemy. There's no nuance in this American election at all. And the more I watch and I listen to a lot of content creators from the States, unfortunately, I'm starting to see a lot of people fall into party lines again. And Wade and I said this recently about my most recent episode. When it does come down to like one of these final fourth turning situation, the small little fractured groups kind of go back into team politics, and people vote or go along to lines of the left or the right because there is an element of truth in the voting system. Like, people are going behind and backing Trump because they want a better economy. They want more money in their pocket. They want cheaper gas prices. So they're falling back into party lines, which is fine. But if you're falling back into party lines, you still have to hold that party accountable for the things that you were adamantly voicing for the past 3 years. If you are adamantly against vaccine mandates and Operation Warp Speed, by all means vote for Trump. He's probably going to be a better option for you. But at the same time, you have to hold him accountable and stick to your convictions that you held for so long.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And those people are the hardest ones to get to about with the Operation Warp Speed thing. They have all the statistics on him not saying injecting bleach, right? But then they'll just completely ignore that, and then they get pissed off about it. So it is wild, absolutely a Trump. Well, I guess what would you call that? Obsession syndrome.
Is Trump derangement syndrome have they labeled that like a real thing, or is that just something that we're calling it?
No, I think Trump derangement syndrome is considered to be a real thing. People who are just seethe when they see Trump and scream and yell. But I think it goes to the other end of the spectrum too, where people are that deranged that Trump is the answer to all the problems and can't do any wrong. Well, the reason it seems to be a spectrum like everything else.
The reason I ask if it's a real thing, because I remember years ago talking about this. Like, we know several people that the mention of Trump, and you send them on a wild tangent about this man that they've never met before in their life, and they just go absolutely crazy. And I was telling Teepee here, just wait, in a couple of years, dude, it'll be a mental illness for people that act like that when you just mention the word Trump and they just go crazy.
Like an on the books mental illness?
Yeah.
Well, and another thing, people rally around him is he's saying this stuff now like, oh, I'm going to completely get rid of federal income tax on your paycheck.
Tariffs and all this stuff.
So then, people are like, hell yeah, you're getting my vote. Where I'm like, you're definitely going to get assassinated by the freaking Federal Reserve, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If he actually tried doing that. So I don't actually see that being a possibility, but it's a smart move on his part to play that card right before the election to try to sway more voters for him, if it's an actual election.
Yeah, true. And then it becomes the practicality of, okay, he said he's going to do it, but will he do it? How many times have we heard prominent figures say they're going to do things and they don't end up doing it? And then we, as, say, a voting population within a democracy, we still don't hold them to account. If there's been a major policy that a prime minister, a president, what have you, is going through to an election with, and they don't actually come forward with the goods, we as a population who voted for them should be pissed off, and we should be able to voice our concerns. But people will quickly just go back to team politics and go, all right, he said he was going to get rid of income tax and he didn't, but hey, my fuel prices are cheaper. Well, no, you made a promise, so you just hold him to it.
Well, we can't do that. Look at all the good things that he did and stuff. So that's the other argument. Yeah, he didn't do that, but he did do this other things. And I'm like, yeah, he did. And in all honesty, when he first got into office, he started out doing, which it's the only president I've ever seen do it, where he started doing things that he said he was going to do on his campaign. And then somewhere along the lines, somebody must have informed him, hey, we're watching your family while you're out working. I want to tone it back, pal. I don't know.
Yeah, you get 5 more things on your list and that's it.
Yeah. And then little Baron wants to have another birthday.
Can you imagine applying that metric to anyone else, though? Let's go with John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy did kill and eat a bunch of people, but he was a really good kids' party clown.
He cooked great barbecue.
Yeah.
They're all serial killers, and that's where I'm like, like Obama, his election campaign, or his re-election campaign was literally almost the same shit that he said on his first election campaign, and people still voted for him. And it's like, what? So I don't know. And I don't know. I'm almost to the point where I'm getting black-pilled, where I don't even believe that elections are real. That I think it's just all for theater. It's all game show at this point.
What I like about what I like about this one going around is you have Kamala Harris saying all this. She's going to do all these things in her first 100 days, and then people are like, "Well, why didn't you do it while you were vice president? Why don't you do some of that stuff now?" So yeah, it's nice, but still, hopefully we can hold some politicians accountable now, because it feels like some people are waking up to it. Because I remember we did do a recall at one point in Colorado where we recalled a bunch of politicians because they said things and then they didn't do them and people were pissed.
Yeah, it needs to happen. If democracy in a democratic republic, which you guys have, if it's truly about the people having a say, the people that sell us a vote, essentially that's what these politicians do. They are buying our vote based on the policies they put forward. If they don't back up the policies or at least attempt to try to bring them in, they've sold us a lie, and we need to take back what our vote was and get them out. I'd be really interested to hear from you guys what your predictions are for the upcoming elections. It's next Tuesday for you guys, if I'm correct. Is that right?
Yeah, it's Tuesday.
Coming down to the wire. So what are your predictions for what could happen stateside? What's it looking like?
I mean, it's looking pretty even if you go by like mainstream media polls. They had Kamala Harris, I think 0.2 or 0.3 in front, and it just keeps flipping back and forth, and it's coming down to swing states at this point right now. So the last thing I saw was Trump. They're predicting Trump to be ahead just off of the states that aren't swing states. And then if he wins, I think 2 of the swing states, he'll have the 300.
Yeah, I don't know. Just based off of what I've been seeing and hearing from people, like, it's going to be hard for me to believe that Kamala Harris is going to win this election. But you never know. Stranger things have happened. Maybe they'll find a bunch of ballots in the middle of the night and, just like they did for Joe.
When we discussed that Joe Rogan episode with Trump, and I think it currently has like 100-something million views on it, like 135 million views on this thing, and they think that it's going to get well past 150.
Wow.
And we were talking about that big, quote-unquote, big interview that Kamala Harris did on Call Her Daddy. Was that the name of the podcast?
Oh, yeah. I think so.
It doesn't even have 1 million views. And that's how old of a interview with her, and that was supposed to be like her big, like, I'm trying to appeal to the young kids.
Right. Dude, you can go on Instagram and Twitter when you go to make a post and you put hashtag Trump or Trump 2024 or whatever. It'll show you how many times that's been trending on other posts and stuff. It's millions and millions. You do it for Kamala, it's like a couple 100,000, not even 1 million. I think the most I saw was like Kamala Harris HQ or something, or Kamala HQ, and that was like 700,000. So it's just like I don't know. I'm
gonna pitch a theory at you guys. I don't want your thoughts on this. This is the 10-1 odds, so I'm going pretty out there with this. I think Trump's going to win the Trump's going to win the election. But what we're going to see somewhere along the lines, they're going to find that their whole heap of votes came in for Trump that were the winning votes, like a huge number, like maybe 60, 70,000, whatever it is, because it's so close in this election, that are going to be all Trump, and they're going to find that they're all illegal or fraudulent votes for Trump. And then the Electoral College is going to be forced publicly to appoint Kamala Harris as the president. Which is ironic, because this is the type of thing that essentially the Democrats did by finding votes in the past. And I'm putting this together because recently, in the past week or so, I've seen an unusually high number of posts from people on Twitter who I know are not American citizens, who are in America, and they're posting, hey, I'm not an American, I'm from Denmark, and I've just voted for Trump. How are those apples? So people on the right side of politics for a long time have been saying, illegal immigrants are voting in the election and it's unfair and it's not right. Well, a lot of people are going out and deliberately going and voting in the US election that aren't US citizens, aren't even residents, and are publicly putting it all over Twitter. So I can't have this feeling that this is being done on purpose, and this is going to be used as some kind of a reference tool by the Democrats to go, see, did you see the giant uptick of non-nationals voting in this election? And we just so happen to have found through an investigation that 200,000, 500,000 votes came in the last minute that were all fraudulent for Trump. And they're going to accuse the Republicans essentially what the Democrats have been doing, say, the last 2 elections. What do you think about that?
We were just discussing a clip from the mainstream media about how there are videos of alleged Haitians going around voting for Harris, and then our government is telling us that that's Russian propaganda. Like, none of that's true.
Right.
So they're already putting that out there that there's voter fraud. So for them to be like, you can't, there's no way that we could have voter fraud for Harris, but we definitely could have voter fraud for Trump is not off the table at all.
Yeah, if it's voter fraud for Harris, then that's Russian propaganda. If it's for Trump, then
it actually happened.
It's happening.
Yeah.
In real life. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible, dude. Anything is at this point, really. Right? And that'd be poetic.
I mean, because we already had that
would be like, so many people would flip their lids. All the Trump worshipers, dude, they would go mad.
I mean, when we were in high school, they had the whole hanging Chad thing, remember? Where they announced Al Gore as being president, and then all of a sudden, they were like, well, sorry, we,
in Florida,
miscalculated.
The recount.
Yeah. And now it's George W. Bush, and like they had the whole thing where like, oh, yep, Al Gore wins, and blah, blah, blah. And then what was like a month later?
Yeah. And it came out and they gave it to Bush.
And
then we had 9/11.
We've already had that happen. I mean, that's happened in our lifetime. So, yeah.
I think maybe more than anything, Harris is quite stubborn in comparison to previous Democratic presidential nominees, that it will be that kind of similar situation where she's going to demand recounts and she's not going to concede at any point because she's set the tone for so long that I am the most popular president of all time, even though on paper she was the least popular VP choice ever, and suddenly she's the most popular presidential candidate for the Democrats. It's double speak, and I think it's going to be it's not going to be a stock standard US election. I don't think it's going to be decided within a week. It could possibly be like history repeating, where you could be a month out with a recount or two, maybe some investigations because of fraudulent votes, and it's going to be a waiting game for this election, I tend to think.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
And I mean, we had Not My President rallies last time Trump was elected, right?
Yeah.
And then I was talking to somebody and they said that it could really not matter who gets elected, because if the left wins, the right could freak out because we're already so like, man, Trump's going to win. Like, look at all these things. Like, everybody loves him. Like, there's no way that Kamala Harris could win, like what we're talking about right now.
Well, and yeah, he's pulling Robert F. Kennedy into his stuff.
Right, he's pulling all these people in, and then if he doesn't win,
Ron Paul, I heard maybe on his cabinet too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so he's that's probably going to pull a lot of libertarian voters, dude. Like,
and then if Trump does win, we're going to have the left freaking out like we did in 2016. So I mean, it could just be, it's going to be revolt either way. It doesn't really matter who wins the presidency.
Yeah, Soros. The new Soros, Alex, he'll send his Goonies out just like they did in
they've
2020.
They've already sown so much hate between the two groups, like it doesn't really matter at this point.
So wow.
You're so polarized, there's going to be a chimp out movement from either party depending on who wins. I think the quite telling thing is that if Trump wins and he doesn't come through with any of the Q or the QAnon promises that these boards have been talking about for the past 8 years, if none of that comes into fruition, you're probably going to see a quite sizable amount of those people just snap. Because there's no mass executions, there's no med beds, there's nothing that's come out. These people are going to lose their collective minds because they've been fed into a reality that didn't manifest.
And
that
being lied to this whole time? Yeah, no kidding. To believe, that's the crazy part about it. To make you believe that you are awake, you're like, you're illuminated. You have more knowledge about stuff going on, right? And then just come to find out it's all a lie. After you thought you already got out of the Matrix by following this shit.
And then you have to ask yourself, what's more dangerous? A left-wing populist that burns down a city or two because Trump's the bad orange man, or a population that freaks out many months, if not years, after a president being elected because their deranged ideas of conspiracy theory didn't pan out?
Yeah. Because Hillary wasn't executed and her doppelgangers walked. Like, that's the crazy part about it, is that some of these people believe, and God bless them all, you know, believe whatever you want, dude, but I find it crazy that these politicians supposedly were executed in military trials and all this stuff because we're at a time of war and this and that and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, you realize how un-American that fucking sounds, right? Like, that's some Gestapo shit. That's not what you want a government capable of doing, and you should be okay with that. That's not something we want.
Yeah, with that, they keep going on about we're under military law at the moment. Well, that's our literal dictatorship. I don't want to be under military law.
Right.
If it's a true democracy or a republic, I want my say in that. I don't want all my rights just arbitrarily taken away by a few jackboots.
No, but this is the good government.
Yeah, so this is the white hats. Their hats are white. They're not black. Come on. It's such a strange thing. But
sorry, I was just going to say, everybody knows that the people in white are the good guys, like, you know, the stormtroopers.
That's right, yeah, definitely. But these are the same people, like you said, there's been military tribunals and they've executed politicians, celebrities, and they've replaced them with doubles. But why would they replace them with doubles that end up doubling down on all the horrendous dark shit they're doing? Like, we replaced Hillary with an even worse version of Hillary.
It's all for show.
It does not make sense.
Because if she was too good, then people would see. Yeah, if she was too good, then people would know something's up, man. Duh. Makes total sense. Yeah, and like, same thing with celebrities. What's the point of cloning these celebrities and doing all, like, you realize how I get it. I've been off in the weeds before where it's like, somebody's probably said that to us on our show, listening to our dumbasses. You realize how crazy that sounds, right? Right. But, I mean, yeah, to go as far as saying, like, they're just doing this for politics. Kanye got cloned for Trump to win.
Right. And, like, all this Diddy stuff's coming out so Kamala can win.
Right.
So.
Nuts. Yeah, and that's a whole other can of worms, do this shit with Diddy. I mean, but not surprising at all. I'm like, yeah. Once again, conspiracy theorists were talking about this shit for years. Not necessarily about Diddy himself, but like all this weird shit
about the music
going
industry
on.
itself
and doing all this stuff.
Yeah, how it's just
satanic pedophiles.
Yeah, satanic pedophiles everywhere.
Black masses.
You know what you can take. You know what you can take to the bank. P. Diddy's ex-girlfriend got up on stage and endorsed Kamala Harris, and you can trust her judgment.
Yeah, you can. Sure. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah. Well, it's just like every time Taylor Swift opens her mouth about a politician, it's like, girl, you have wrote how many albums about all these men that you date? Like, how can we trust any choice you fucking make?
Yeah, because you made the wrong decision.
Yeah, like you have made a career on making the wrong decision. Let's not listen to you.
But here's my whole take on that is, if you're getting your political information from a celebrity, you have seriously need to get back into touch with reality. Like, you got issues. Because why the hell would you take those guys' advice from him? You're an actor. You're an entertainer. You're a modern day jester. Do a fucking dance for me. Sing me a song and shut up.
It's like kneeling for the national anthem. Like, dude, I pay you to play sports, not your fucking political views.
Right.
Get to it.
That's the whole reason I'm watching
dance,
sports.
Monkey, dance.
Yeah. That's the whole reason I'm watching sports, is so I don't have to think about the politics.
Yeah.
And now you're bringing it in here. And that's what a lot of average Americans are pissed off about, too. It's like you just can't get away from any of this, the DEI, political movement bullshit, and anything now. It's just everywhere in your face. And I get it. It's irritating. That's why I just don't look at any of that shit. You know what I mean? I have that choice. I don't have to look at, I mean, I can still read some shit about it, but I don't have to constantly be watching films and purchasing films that have all that garbage in it and bringing that around my house and my kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's so much of it. And I think this is where the whole celebrity kind of QAnon kind of really fringe conspiracy stuff, it plays into their hands, because they are pushing the DEI narrative purely because there's contracts that they sign which has, say, with Disney, that requires a certain amount of it. So there's a financial incentive that alone. But when you get into the weeds of, say, Project Mockingbird, which was essentially just the media in general, well, entertainment is a part of media now. So
yes.
Of course, there's going to be a certain percentage of Hollywood that comes out and endorses Kamala, because she's the person that the deep state, the intelligence apparatus, they have picked her. They don't necessarily want Trump, or at least we're told they don't want Trump. So it just makes sense. We don't have to go into the weeds of Tom Hanks was executed and Brad Pitt is playing 5 other celebrities in Hollywood and he's the same person. That's just retarded. Like, how much do we have to?
It's so good.
How much do we have to indulge of this junk food conspiracy before we start calling other people out? It's wild.
It is wild, dude. Junk food conspiracy. That is a perfect term for it. I think we just found the title for the show.
Just imagining Brad Pitt. Who am I going to be today?
Right. I think I'm going to be Morgan Freeman.
Yeah. I'm the greatest actor alive. I can be whoever I want to be.
I get 12 paychecks this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's another
That's how
thing.
I
Like,
pay for all my adopted kids I had with frickin' Angelina Jolie.
like all these celebrities are out there chasing paychecks, and
That's
then
not
you're going to
conspiracy.
believe what they say. Like, these people are obviously doing this for money. Like, they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
Yeah, because they're just awesome people that love the human race.
Well, there you go. You hit the real conspiracy just then. It's not a means of playing other actors to deceive people. He's playing other actors so he can pay for all those kids he got with Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, they're little freaking.
It was out of necessity. He didn't want to be multiple actors. He had to.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to pay for my freaking hockey team at home.
Now he's got to pay all that child support, I think.
Yeah, they're divorced now. Weird. What? Did he get tired of her drinking his blood or something? Like, all right.
Oh, there you go.
He probably got a little bit weirded out by Billy Bob Thornton constantly being at the window.
Yeah. And her still having a vial of his blood around her neck. Why are you still wearing that?
Honey, is that Billy Bob? Pulls the blind down. No, that's no one.
He's just floating outside the window. That'd be so creepy.
Ain't got no gas in it.
Hey, Billy Bob, what are you doing with that sling blade? I tend to kill you with it. Yeah. Oh, dude, that'd be something out of your nightmares, wouldn't it be? Like in that Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, you know, when his buddy's floating on the second floor and he opens the blinds and there's his buddy there. But imagine that being Billy Bob Thornton.
His sling blade?
Yeah. I don't even know. Just Bad Santa, any of his characters, dude. Those high cheekbones and that sunken face that he has. If he just is standing there, mouth breathing at you, it's going to be scary. You know what I mean?
Well, there you go. That's another reason he's taking on all these other personas of other actors so he can avoid Billy Bob Thornton. It's for his own safety.
That makes total sense. He's on the run, dude. We got to put this one out on Reddit.
Billy Bob Thornton, the vampire, hunting down
Brad Pitt, who has to play multiple different actors to stay on the run, but also to support all of his children that he has with Angelina Jolie. Whew.
He's being practical about it.
I feel like we just played 8 Degrees with Kevin Bacon or whatever that fucking game is. To get to this. The mental gymnastics we had to do. Is this how liberals think all day? They just come up with wild shit in their head like, yeah, that makes total sense. This is how I got to this conclusion. Acid.
Well, we're seeing that in real time with that squirrel that got euthanized, right?
Oh, yeah,
They've instantly gone to squirrels. Peanut, the squirrel that was euthanized. Squirrels are now a symbol of right-wing fascism because there's a photo of Hitler feeding a squirrel.
No way, dude.
That's the mental gymnastics of this.
Oh,
so wild.
What about the mental gymnastics of the Madison Square Garden where they were like, you know who else had a rally at Madison Square Garden?
Oh.
The Nazis.
Hitler. Yeah. Yeah, I know. And then also it's like, oh, did you hear at that rally that Trump said he wants Liz Cheney to be put up against a firing squad? Did you hear that one?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and then it's like, no, he said put a rifle in her hand and send her to the front lines and she'll feel different when she has 9 rifles pointing at her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the liberal was like, he wants her up against the wall in a firing squad and bullet in her head. He said it. I was there. And it's just like, geez, people.
Well, This is the same demographic that thinks that, most firearms are fully auto and they're assault rifles.
Yeah.
I'm heat-seeking and can take out planes.
Yes, you can shoot down planes full of children only. It's so outrageous. I know. And some of these people are making laws in like City Hall and parts of this country that have no idea what a magazine versus a clip is, or the difference between a rifle round or a pistol round or anything. Not saying that you should have to know that, but if you're going to be making laws up that directly affect those things, then maybe you should educate yourself a little bit.
It's almost like they need to go through a flashcard scenario and someone holds up a card and that has a picture of something. And if they incorrectly identify so many cards, they can't hold office. Holds up an AR-15. What's that? That's a fully automatic machine gun. You're out. Get out of here.
That's a Gatling gun. Right. Dude, you can't have the local sheriff come down and teach you something, right? They do firearm safety all the time.
You can't have those Secret Service guys give you a lesson on, hey, this is a handgun.
Or yeah, when you get up higher in like Congress or senators, yeah. No, you can't. That'd take time out of the coke fueled orgies that they're having. Yeah. Can't take time away from those important things. Oh man.
Well, didn't you have a gay press secretary or a Democratic appointee film a gay sex scene in your he was like an intern or something, yeah, like a senator's intern, yeah. On the Senate floor, he filmed himself getting made love to by his man, or some bowl study found on Grindr, I don't know. But yeah. What's wild is the silhouette of that could become like the new flag for the Democratic Party, just on a blue background with the black silhouette of that, and love is love. But
Erock told me that the rest of the staff said that intern was a real pain in the ass anyway. So, but yeah, this really happened. This is the debauchery that happens on our Capitol building.
Can't they just do it in secret like they used to do, and just go to a random townhouse and get 30 hookers around and kilograms of blow and just
motel that
do it
charges
behind closed doors?
I mean, I think that still happens, but. That kid must not have been invited to those certain parties, because there's that one congressman, I can't remember the guy's name, or he was a senator, but he's in a wheelchair. He's a younger guy. He was invited to this orgy with all these older people and stuff. And he was like, "What? Did you just invite me to an orgy?" He's like, "Oh yeah, this is just a thing we do, this and that." And he was like, "Yeah, it was kind of weird because when I was growing up, I was looking at these politicians that I kind of admired them and stuff, and then come to find out they're all in these weird sex clubs and stuff." And then he said he had one interview about it and then never talked about it again. I'm assuming somebody said something to him.
That's a crazy thing that Australia has something similar. We've got our Parliament House in Canberra, which is our capital, and the so-called greatest institution in Australian democracy. A little controversy came out not that long ago where the prayer room, which is exclusively for Christians, this prayer room, what was going on was people were going in there with prostitutes and each other and having debaucherous gay sex with drugs.
Wow.
In the prayer room, of all places, because no one was using it. So that was the go-to room for all that type of debauchery. Holy smokes.
That's insane. Well, yeah, there was just recently, they busted this high-profile prostitution ring. It was in Boston, DC. It went all the way out to Seattle, I think, or Portland, somewhere out west. And yeah, it was all high client profiles, senators and congressmen and all this stuff. And then there's a few articles about it, and then I haven't heard anything since.
And what about Pizzagate?
They kind of just stopped talking about. What about it?
Remember they were saying that was a high profile pedophile ring within the Congress, and then you heard about it for a couple weeks, and then people were like, if you think Pizzagate's real, you're fucking crazy.
Well, yeah, because that one QAnon guy went there and shot the place up.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I want to see Frazzle Drap.
And I mean, we make the correlation between the Roman Empire and the American Empire being basically the same thing, just two sides of the same coin, right? And what about all the stories about the same shit happening back then too, where they were having just massive orgies and
yeah, exactly,
getting wasted. And
the pedophile ring, there was that Ted Gunderson, that retired FBI chief, and that Iowa senator, I can't remember his name, but they wrote that book, The Franklin Cover-Up. And it was after that Johnny Gosch kid went missing. And they
all the Boys Town stuff.
They uncovered all that stuff in Omaha, Boys Town, and how these kids would get taken to some private airstrip in northwestern Iowa and flown to either D.C. or Portland. And then they lost track of them from there. But yeah, there was a whole book. This senator and this retired FBI chief who turned into a private investigator did a whole investigation into it and stuff back in the 80s.
And I read somewhere that under Biden-Harris, like more children have come up missing from immigration.
The border.
Yeah, from the border than any other.
Yeah, they finally admitted that.
Yeah,
which was a conspiracy.
Right. Like
Joe's just sitting at the border, dislodging his jaw like a python and eating them whole. That's why.
Chewing all them baby legs,
sucking on baby toes. It's just like that Tenacious D song, Real men sucking on toes. That's probably what he was thinking. Yeah, if that's not weird, if that doesn't give you creep vibes, I don't know what does, man.
That's almost blackpilling in itself, that multiple times even the media have admitted that this high level of pedophilia goes on within the powers of government, and then 2 weeks later the news cycle's over and they're starting to talk about something else.
Yeah, like it's not a big deal.
Have you not dealt with the pedophiles?
Right.
Come on.
Is this not a story anymore?
Well, I mean, we just had that. They just had that Nickelodeon expose thing come out where they were talking about the guy. What's his name? Dan Schneider, or whatever his name is like a huge pedophile and made all these kids do all these crazy shit, and he could possibly be the father of one of these girls' babies, and she was like 16 when she got pregnant, and he's like 40 something. Like, it's
Britney Spears' sister.
Yeah, it's like it's fucking insane. Like, it goes. I mean, it's nonstop. What
shocker?
Yeah.
What was the guy's surname again? Sorry.
It's like Dan Schneider, I believe it is.
Every single time.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah.
And I think it's one, you can kind of understand at a logical level the upper echelons of power within politics doing this stuff and getting away with it, because they control the mechanisms of government. They've got the police force, they've got security agencies, they've got intelligence, all that to support them. When it starts filtering down into, say, the entertainment industry, that's when it gets closer to us at an individual level and it becomes more uncomfortable. Like, can you remember when we had Corey Haim and Corey Feldman openly came out and said what happened to them as child stars, and then Corey Haim killed himself and Corey Feldman kept talking about it at the height of the Me Too movement, and it was completely suppressed because he's slightly weird looking and wears a Michael Jackson glove, so no one took him seriously.
Yeah, they're like, well, you did too many drugs in the 80s, Corey, you're stupid.
Yeah, and just completely ignored him, basically, just, like, hey, this didn't happen to you, and now it's like, hey, sorry. Like, everyone talking about Justin Bieber, like how we used to,
Diddy.
Yeah, how the media just would relentlessly make fun of Justin Bieber and all this stuff, and now it's like, well, now we realize that he's a victim and we feel bad. It's like,
well, and they would show videos where he was like literally getting like sexually harassed at a young age. Yeah. Like Pink was like,
like licking his head, like she like licked him, and then and then
tongue punching his throat.
I think Katy Perry's like grabbing his ass and shit, and he's like fucking 16 years old.
Yeah, but they're like, oh, it's just, that's a cute thing that entertainers do because they're just such good friends.
Right.
It's just harmless. That's, just, no big deal. And that's the thing too, is that people feel, I think, they get attached to some of these artists, these celebrities and stuff. They put them on a pedestal, but they essentially they're inviting these people into their home. Whenever you watch a Tom Hanks movie, dude, you're inviting old Tom Hanks into your house, right? Sit down and talk to you and your family, whatever the movie is. So it's, once again, it's just one of those hard pills to swallow to realize, like, oh man, so this guy's just been a scumbag my entire life. Like, was that you and Julia that did that breakdown on the Burbs? Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's an eye-opener. America's Dad. That started off as just like some Q fringe conspiracy stuff, but there's a lot of things surrounding that particular actor that are very questionable, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, and that's what we said before about the Q movement. That's where you got people hooked because you mixed some of that really heinous true shit that happens, and with the bullshit, you get them believing when they start looking at all this true stuff, and then once you get them hooked, and then you start feeding them all the fantasy, the conspiracy junk food.
100%.
Just like any good conspiracy, man, you gotta mix the truth in with the bullshit, otherwise nobody's gonna believe it.
Well, and it's like I keep seeing these memes about how here pretty soon we're going to run out of conspiracies because everything turns out to be true. It's like how many times, how many things do it has to be true, turn out to be true before you just flat out start believing everything?
Well, and that's part of the Q thing too, right? Is like how many times before, how many coincidences do you need to see or whatever, right? Because my one buddy he got pretty big into it, and I was reading some of those Q drops like when they would come out. And then I was researching them, and I'm like, this is wild. I'm like, if this turns out to be true, dude, like, this is like some secret police shit. You know?
Yeah.
And then I learned...
And don't get me wrong, if it becomes true, we don't actively lose anything. It's actually a net positive for everyone if it ends up being true, because the white hats have saved the day and everything's right. Well and good.
We're all out
if
of
they're
debt.
Wrong, we're all screwed.
Yeah. Well, and then like I said, I started researching the Q stuff, and then I stumbled across Operation Trust, and then read that, and I'm like, it's the same playbook. Same thing.
Literally.
Yeah. So it's like...
The wild one that's been around recently for conspiracy theories being true is the fluoride stuff. Like, we've known this as conspiracy theorists. Even mainstream scientists have known that's the extent of what fluoride does to you, but it's been kind of pushed by, say, big dentistry and health professionals for it's good for your teeth enamel.
Yeah.
It started off with one case in the United States where it was it came out of that it's actually is detrimental to IQ and brain development of fetuses. It has exploded overnight, but it's still not mainstream news. We've got Aboriginal communities in Australia that have actively stopped using tap water, and they are getting in at taxpayer dollars bottled water because the fluoride is detrimental to IQ.
Wow.
And no one's talking about it. It's like a little snippet article in our mainstream national news, but doesn't get a full-time story.
Well, I know they've been talking about fluoride in the water and how it makes you dumb since I was in high school, since Mel and I were in school. So, yeah, if you just gloss over it, dude, and make it, if the news makes it not a big deal, then you automatically click it in your head. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. Then if they're not making a big deal about it.
I saw a thing, a gentleman was talking about fluoride, and he was like, even if you stop drinking tap water and you still wash your body with the well water or the city water, you're still absorbing fluoride through your skin because your skin can absorb, your skin absorbs stuff too, right?
Right.
So like, and then he was talking about bottled water being reverse osmosis, and most people think that if you reverse osmosis water, it gets rid of the fluoride, but it has to be high pressure reverse osmosis, which most companies don't use. So even that bottled water could possibly contain fluoride.
And then there's the microplastics associated with bottled water, and that's everywhere.
I mean,
then you go, okay, I'm going to go to a water tank. That's fine. I'll capture my own rainwater. And then they're spraying the skies.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, they're finding microplastics in all these fish they're catching now. They're saying that microplastics are possibly in all everyone's bloodstream at this point. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, they that Hamish guy that died on the that submersible, and he went down to the ocean, down in the Mariana Trench, and they found, before he died on this one, but it was going looking for the Titanic, they found a bunch of microplastics at the bottom of the ocean, at like one of the deepest parts of the ocean that they can go to. It reminds me kind of that scripture, and it made me think about that guest that you had on, talking about how there was already that millennial reign of Christ, and we're in that post-era now. But in Revelation, though, it talks about that angel poured wormwood or whatever out on the earth, and like a third of the earth was poisoned. And I always remember reading that scripture as a kid, and I'm like, how could a third of the earth be poisoned? Like, what process would they use for that? And look at us now. We just named them all off. Seed oils, microplastics, fluoride, TV, pornography.
Well, I also saw a thing the other day that they scientists are saying that there's like a 60% reduction in wildlife in the last like 5 years.
Oh yeah, they keep getting these weird diseases and stuff, and
like fish die-offs and all this stuff, and like it's insane what's going on right now.
That Jason A. You ever heard of Jason A. on YouTube, Drew?
I can't say I have.
He does. He used to do a lot of just weather phenomena. He's been making videos since like 2011.
Oh no, yes, I'm familiar with him.
Yeah, makes great little shows. But yeah, he's been making videos of all these mass die-offs since like 2011. So that this has been 13 years. This has been going on, dude. That at least that I've known about it. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense that the populations are dying because they know about it. They're just not talking about it. They're not. The media is not making a big deal.
I think it was prior to the first Trump election. Do you remember there was a mass die-off of a bunch of antelope in Mongolia, and they just found like 3,000 just had all dropped dead instantly on the spot? Do you remember that one?
Oh yeah.
And then it was never spoken about again.
Yep.
That's just a little bit concerning that there's that many died at once and no one knows why.
Yeah. No, it's totally normal, dude. Just like the crows killing the doves that the Pope released when Pope Francis was christened Pope. Totally normal shit that happens. Don't worry about it.
And there's like a video of like 1,000 blackbirds falling out of the sky, and they said that it was a downdraft or whatever.
They flew through a cloud of methane.
Yeah, and all these birds got forced down, but it was just like at 1 second there was no birds on the street. The next second, this street is just covered in blackbirds.
They show all these like Ring video cameras of like the neighborhood. It's crazy. It's just like car alarms are going off. All this shit. It's nuts. Yeah, totally normal stuff that happens here in America when they're poisoning our skies and insane.
I've got to ask you guys. I'm just going off in random directions now because you're just ticking all the boxes of a conspiracy theory mind at the moment. Did you see the Halloween costume that Kim Kardashian wore? The albino alligator?
No.
Look that up.
You haven't seen that? Oh, you're going to have to look it up right now. Kim Kardashian got the full prosthetics done, and she's dressed up as a white alligator but looks like a reptilian. So the very fringe conspiracy ideas that the elites are reptiles and whatnot.
Oh, wow.
But I'm looking at this picture, and I'm like, dude, I could definitely spin this against her. Because she's an albino alligator, maybe she's supporting white supremacy. Because why didn't she choose an alligator of color?
Well, I mean, like, they have all the, the white horse, the black horse, the pale horse, and what's the last one? What's the color of the last horse? The four horsemen?
Red, black, white, and was it orange? No.
But like they say that in all these music videos that the entertainers do, that they depict certain things and like they have a color scheme basically. So that could be the possibility of why she chose white.
Yeah, they've been putting a lot of that symbolism in their videos a lot, in their stuff. Ew.
And then there's Selma Hayek eating some kind of a weird, pulsating, moving blob of meat or whatever the hell it was, and she's just eating it and hoeing down on it. And the post that she put out with it was, "Trick or treat, I choose treat." And she looks like she's eating a deformed kind of homunculus humanoid thing, and she's just hoeing down on it. That's a strange thing altogether.
That is super strange, especially like if you listen to Operation Red Pill's podcast about You Are the Treat. Their Halloween ones. Have you heard those ones?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so... and that's where I learned...
an alligator?
That's an albino alligator, Kim Kardashian. She looks like she's trying to audition for Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, she looks like an alien.
Yeah, she's Gul Dukat. She's on a Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not creepy at all.
Yeah, I feel like that's highly symbolistic.
Why would people believe that I'm a witch?
I think she's just doing the Pamela Anderson thing. Pam Anderson started the whole no makeup trend. That's Kim without makeup on.
That's a good possibility.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll have to put that one on Reddit. Yeah, at the end of the Brad Pitt and Billy Bob Thornton hunting deal. So wild. All right, well, yeah, we've ticked a bunch of boxes on this show, man. Yeah, well, and I guess we didn't really cover it real quick, but yeah, you think, well, yeah, yes, we did. Yeah, Australia would be the support, just mainly support elements for NATO.
I mean, they already have troops in Ukraine. I've seen videos of Australians fighting in Ukraine.
Well, they also recruited a bunch of mercenaries. Drew, didn't you share something on the social medias about?
Oh, yes, there's the version of the Israeli Foreign Legion, and they kind of put it out as being a support role, making food for Israeli soldiers for the IDF. But Australia currently has, and I'm going to bring it up just so I can quote it verbatim. It's called SAR-L, SAR-EL, Volunteers for Israel. Become an Australian volunteer to assist the IDF, Israeli Defence Force, on base. And it's recruiting in Melbourne, Australia, where they're connecting with Israeli Defence Force soldiers, running drills with them, making food. But essentially, it's the gateway to get more Australians to go overseas and be their Foreign Legion troops over there. So we've got Australians being recruited for that conflict. We've got Australian mercs fighting Ukraine. There's lots of videos of Australians, going after Russians and hunting them for sport. Australia is always going to be that supportive role. We don't have the population size to really benefit any one nation, but we do have the resources, and what we do have within our defence force, pound for pound, we tend to bat above our weight. So we may have a limited infrastructure in our military and our capabilities, but what we do, we do very well. Yeah, beyond that, man, we're just a staging ground for you guys. Just a staging ground. So much so that, like I've mentioned I think it was a previous episode, we invested heavily in hospital ships and amphibious transport deployment apparatus. Essentially, it's just to support the American Marines in the Asia-Pacific region, and that was essentially what it was pitched as to our defence force. So we're always going to be the little Aussie battler that comes out to help their friends in need, but ultimately just gets used and abused by larger powers. That's how it's always been. Well, that for the British, we were the cannon fodder and the men on the front lines, and then we kind of pivoted into the Anglo-American Empire, and America's doing the same thing with our defense force.
Well, at least you're not being put out on the front line and used as cannon fodder this time.
Yeah, at least we're not Koreans. That's fine. We're not North Koreans.
Yeah. Praise God for that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting how this election turns out and what actually happens, and if it ends on Election Day.
Here's a wild idea just before the show finishes, and I'll lose my train of thought. What happens if Trump wins and he gets up on stage and Kamala concedes and he's like going through his speech, and then he rips this mask off and it's Brad Pitt underneath?
As my first order of president, Billy Bob Thornton has to go back to Transylvania.
I'm opening up a 6th branch of the American military, Vampire Hunters. And our first target is Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh my gosh.
Followed by the alligator creature that is Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, I would immediately get on the line and be like, did they turn CERN back on or what?
What timeline are we living in today?
Yeah, did I just step into a portal when I woke up this morning? What is going on here? But you know what? I think that outcome would actually be way better than what's going to happen. So I'm voting for that. Hopefully that happens.
I saw a lot of people are going to vote for Fred Durst, so maybe he'll win.
The Electoral College has. Yeah. Hey, man, I'm all for it. Let's shake it up, baby. We already know Fred's going to cut him up with chainsaws if you piss him off, so you know where he stands. And he likes hot dog flavored water, apparently.
That's right. Chocolate starfish.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, what kind of drugs were they on when they came up with that idea, that combination?
Well, my favorite thing about Fred Durst is that he will dress all crazy, right? And everybody's like, "What's wrong with Fred Durst?" And then you look at Wes Borland, and he is just dressed insane. Everybody's like, "No, that's fine.
He's an artist.
Like, that's perfectly fine." But Fred, there's something wrong with you, man.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with him.
Oh, Mel and I saw Limp Bizkit, and Wes was dressed up as a Baptist pastor with like this crazy barber's mustache,
and then
his blacked out contacts.
And he had, and the whole thing, like the neck thing and everything. It was insane. It was
and
great.
His face was painted white, and he's like staring at these kids, and it was creepy. And then Fred Durst was not wearing any pants. Like Mel was like, I don't think Fred's wearing any pants. From like where we were sitting, we really couldn't see it. And then we look over the big screen, and I'm like, yeah, I think you're right, dude. And then after like the third song, Fred's like, so am I the only dumb motherfucker that showed up or went to work with no pants today? Because he had this giant...
The question is, would you be more or less uncomfortable being in a room alone with him or with Billy Bob Thornton mouth breathing watching you from the corner?
I'd rather have Fred Durst.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be afraid that Fred would actually kill me. Billy might. Yeah. Who knows? Or worse, might perform the word that rhymes with grape.
True.
and then if it's like in Bad Santa, when I get done with you, you're not going to shit right for a week.
See, that's how we'll be able to pick out who Brad Pitt is when he's wearing one of his many disguises.
His bowel movements. Oh, jeez. Yeah, maybe he is playing Biden then, just shitting himself everywhere. Oh, man, that's terrible. Anyways, this was a great show, man. This was a good one.
That was a good laugh. I enjoyed it. I'm really sorry if we didn't end up covering the topics the way you intended to, and we went down plenty of rabbit holes, but God, it was a good laugh.
No, it was good. We didn't, like I said, we kind of had a loosely based agenda, and but this is what we wanted to do, just have a good conversation, and like I said, go off in the weeds a little bit. So,
mission accomplished.
Definitely. So, hey, for our listeners, Drew, can you let people know where to find you, if you'd be so kind?
Yeah, you're Missing the Point podcast, MISSEN. You can find me on all the usual podcatchers. Don't bother going to YouTube. My videos rarely go up there, and when they do, they tend to get pinned and removed instantly. So primarily a audio-only podcast, Spotify, all the other podcatchers, you know where to find them. And Conspiracy Theatre 3000, where myself, Ryan, Dean, and Moral Bob, we break down movies, do watch-alongs, all that type of fun stuff. And that's where you can find me. Yeah. See if you can. If not, follow some links on these guys' shows, and you should be able to find me through the back channels.
Yeah, we'll definitely leave links in the description for the show. And yeah, the Conspiracy Theater 3000, that's another one of my favorites.
Yeah, I listened to that.
Like I said, you did that heavy metal watch along, and it made I had to go buy the Blu-ray and watch the movie. And I was like, man, like I said, I was at work listening to it, and I got on Amazon. I was like, yep, purchasing right now. Then my wife watched it with me, and she's like, what the hell did I just watch?
You watched an amazing movie. That's what you just watched.
Yeah, one of the best movies ever made. That's what you watched. But, yeah, all right. So, for our end, you can find us at Instagram at iowatalkguys_podcasts. You can also find us on X or Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, at Iowa Talk Guys.
You can find us at iowatalkguys.com, Iowa Talk Guys on YouTube, and Iowa Talk Guys on Rumble.
Yes, and please like, follow, subscribe, share. Go check out Drew's stuff. He's definitely one of my favorite shows to listen to. I listen to a lot of his content, and we love having him on the show. So, we, definitely going to have to do this again. It was an awesome time. So, always remember, don't eat the yellow cake.
Don't eat the yellow snow.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid.
If she's got an apple, she's probably got a banana.
So, yeah, pay close attention, especially if you're in Thailand, I hear. Iowa Talk Guys, out.
Hi, good night, everybody.
I ain't got a good grade.
Well, I'm sick and tired of smart guys. Oh, durga.
It wasn't a space laser. It wasn't a murder hornet. It wasn't Sasquatch. It was a bullet.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. You lose. Good day, sir.
Here I am with you in Iowa, and I'd rather be here. I'd rather be here. So thank you very much. Very nice. Appreciate it.